welcome to this Thursday's episode of the 905er podcast and the 905 Roundup. My name is Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And we have a brace of stories, a couple of more general interest to everybody in the 905, and indeed in Ontario, and a couple a bit more local. But we're starting off with, well, a kind of provincial act of Scroogery, shall we say? Scroogery? is that a word?
It is now. It is now. It's a good one.
Anyway, Scrooge McFord has made a decision. Over to you, Joel. You have opinions.
Yes. Well, I don't think I need to bring anyone up to speed on this. As everyone will know, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II passed away this past week, and we're not going to get into the yays or nays of the monarchy as an institution. However, I think we can generally agree that the Queen Elizabeth herself, the Queen herself, was a fairly decent person and a good person, someone that you looked at her and you thought, you didn't really think anything bad per se. Her kids, maybe not so much, but she herself was a good symbol for this Canada. And she was the Queen of Canada, which not just the Queen of England, but also the Queen of Canada here, as we are a constitutional monarchy, which brings us to her memorial, her funeral, her commemoration will be this coming Monday, September 19th. Now, if you happen to live in Australia or New Zealand, you will get that day off to pay tribute, pay your respects, reflect as you see fit. But you will not be going to work. You will be doing that perhaps in your own way. Same should be said here in Canada. The Prime Minister said that it will be a day off for federal employees. And if you look out to our eastern part of the country, the Maritimes, so PEI, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, will all be invoking the day off. I believe Newfoundland as well. Quebec, not so much, and definitely not here in Ontario. Premier Doug Ford has decreed, nope, we'll just have a day of mourning at 1 o'clock. We are granted the right to take a moment of silence. That's it. This is okay. All the levity and the sarcasm aside, this has kind of stirred up a bit of a storm on social media amongst people who just say this is, what you may not like the monarchy as an institution. There's the ties to colonialism, which are well established if you pick up a textbook and whatnot. But there is something to be said about this woman was the face of she was on our money. She was the person that we was the head of our state for, let's face it, most people listening, all of our lives. We have not had any other king or queen to do this. She was it. And there's something to be said about that as a life of service to the Commonwealth. That is there wrong with taking a day to just look on that and make, kind of look inward and kind of give respect to this woman who millions of Ontarians and Canadians would come out to visit her when she visited the country. There's something there. And I think, I think Doug Ford is on the wrong side of this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually the point I would kind of make just occurred to me while you were talking is that, everybody thinks Justin Trudeau is some kind of dictator. The guy can't even give us a day off unless you actually work for the federal government. The guy can't give us a weekend, a long weekend. The federal government in this country is very weak. Our confederation is very decentralized, and a huge amount of the whip hand lies with the provinces. And this kind of just illustrates that point. They can't even make a national holiday, for goodness sake. Now, as to the rights and wrongs of the day itself, I'm not really going to get into that. I'm not a royalist, but I've got nothing against days off, and I've got nothing against the individual the individual monarch per se is what it represents that I have a bit of a beef with. Kind of, I have this thing about democracy. That sounded really smug, and I didn't mean it to, but this monarchy is symbolic, and the symbol is anti-democratic, and that's my kind of beef with it. That's neither here nor there right now. I think, if she's just as much our queen as she is the United Kingdom's queen, she was just as much our queen as she was Australia's queen or New Zealand's queen, or any of the Commonwealth nations that still have her as head of state. Who is Doug Ford to say that we should be treated differently? And the reason seems to be, reading between the lines, that certain business and industry groups have suggested that it would be too hurtful for business. Well, give me a break, really.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't. One advantage of being a monarchy, is we get a few extra days off. Maybe one day every 10 years we'll get a day off because of a wedding or whatever. That sounds extremely cynical. I don't mean it to be, but this is part of the price of being a monarchy. The Conservatives have traditionally been the party of tradition and conservatism, of conserving what is best, in the immortal words of Robert Peel, who created that party in 1845, 1846.
I take your word for it.
The Tamworth Manifesto is where that the Conservative Party was born, and conserving what is best, and royalty has always been a big part of that. It's like, surely to goodness, that if you think that a monarchy is a good thing, and that's a very valid point of view, if you think monarchy is worth preserving, and that's a perfectly valid point of view, then giving it the honour and respect that certainly millions of Canadians feel and share about the late Queen Elizabeth is completely appropriate within that context. And I think it's bizarre that Ontario should want to take a different route for entirely tedious and uncharitable kind of reasons, rather than for any good reason.
That's the thing, is the Conservative Party and the Progressive Conservative Party, because they are two separate entities, both love to wrap themselves in the flag and pride themselves on tradition and the sanctity of our past, and how it will, the golden days of yesteryear are what we have to rebuild towards. It was never as good as how we once had it. And I find this act is a slap in the face to that. Like it's kind of that, it shows that naked ambition that's underneath it all. That this myth of, oh, they want to help build what's strong in this country. And I like to say, the idea of small business unable to shut down for a day, because here's what's going to happen. The ones who are not going to shut down are going to be your Tim Hortons or your McDonald's. They are going to be just fine. Like, they are not going to. To me, they're not going to be hurting for a day closed down. It's if you're, and it's kind of this weird yin yang approach that this government has towards business. They love to pride themselves on, our private enterprise, it can do anything. It can, once we unleash the power of private enterprise and innovation and we can do anything in this country. The secret to for our long-term care problems, it's the private sector. They're going to innovate and they're going to find better ways of doing it. And yet at the same time, can we have a day off to commemorate our queen? Oh, they're so hard done by. They couldn't possibly bear the weight of one day off to pay their employees. And it's like, no, you can't have it both ways. Either our businesses are so weak and hard to get by, and they're scraping by, and they're so weak and incapable of any kind of change or any bad things that might happen, that in which case then we better start propping them up with massive handouts and tax breaks and just hand them everything, which maybe that's what is coming down the line, who knows, or they're strong enough that they can weather any change, any rules, any laws, or the commemoration of our head of state. They should be able to weather that one day. Like, it's just one day. They'll make up that money later in the week.
It actually touches back on something that came up in yesterday's interview with Keenan Loomis, and I didn't want to make the whole interview about this one point, so we moved on. But we were discussing the Ontario Chamber of Commerce's and the individual branches of the Chamber of Commerce's opposition to the increase in minimum wage back in 2018, and Keenan Loomis said, well, this was connected with kind of the Liberals' last-ditch attempts to stay in power, and I could dispute elements of that. But more to the point, what I do remember very well from that time is that, if when surveys were done of members of the chambers of commerce around the province, small businesses like mine, from micro to minimal, overwhelmingly were just fine with an increase in minimum wage, because we appreciated that our business don't succeed with badly paid staff. We have to pay well to get the kind of staff that we want. Paying bad wages is bad business for small businesses. The people who kicked up a stink about minimum wage and who insisted that any increase would kill off businesses left, right, and centre, which it didn't and which it never does, were the big businesses, the major corporations, the Labatt's and the Molsons and the Walmarts and the Amazons and the rest of them. Those are the ones that complain. The ones who are never going to go out of business because of anything, but who are answering to their shareholders and thinking of the end of year report profit percentages, which has nothing at all to do with good business sense, in fact. So, which is a long way of coming back to this, that certain business groups, I believe, have said this would be a bad thing to take the day off.
Well,
that's not coming from small businesses. That's coming from big business.
No, let's say it. It's on Twitter. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business came out and said we shouldn't have the day off. It's too onerous. And you're right, for all the reasons that you just said, it's not onerous. One day off to commemorate our head of state is not nobody's going to go to business for that. It's a bullshit argument. And what I think this small moment is that it's become nakedly clear Doug Ford and the PC party does not care about institutions. They don't care about people who, individual citizens of this country, say, well, I want to pay homage or my respects in my way. I would like a day to do that. They don't care about that. They care about money and the money of their friends. They care about. They don't care how. They just know that their friends need to make more money this year than they did last year, and they don't care how. And we're expendable for that. Is basically what it comes down to.
And I think it's perfectly acceptable and perfectly natural and perfectly respectful, in all honesty, if you're a person who's simply going, I want an extra day off. They're getting it.
Yeah.
60 million people are getting it in that country. 30 million people are getting it in that country. 18 million people are getting it in that country. Why the hell aren't I getting it? I think that's perfectly fine. We don't even have to talk about the rights and wrongs and honouring this and that and the other. I think it's like, this is the system we have. This is what's deemed appropriate across large swathes of the former empire, the Commonwealth, whatever, and then you can dispute the rights and wrongs and otherwises of all that stuff and how this came to be. Ultimately, why the hell are they getting a day off and we're not? It's as simple as that.
You know what? Let's leave it at that for our first break. We'll be right back just after this. And we're back. So we're leaving the whirlwind politics of head of states and monarchies and constitutional forms of government into the myopic world of City of Burlington policies. Where do you want to start, Roland? Which one?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things have come up. I mean, this comes up at most elections, but I do, and I wouldn't mention this if I didn't think it was slightly different, right? You know, a game that goes on at election time can be that non-incumbent candidates kind of try to get the incumbents to be unable to sort of leave their homes and do anything without saying, well, they're electioneering. They're using city resources to electioneer, and I wouldn't support that. Like, no, the councillors are councillors until the day they leave office. They're allowed to do their job. However, there was an event in Ward 3 yesterday, I guess. It was on September the 11th. It was Ward 6 actually. It was the 4th annual Rural Ward 6 Sweet and Greet at Act Back by Bees, which is a fine company, I'm sure, in Ward 6. And I believe this was the one which was sponsored, and make sure I get my facts right here. This kind of had city backing, a city advertising, but it came across very much like an electioneering event, like a campaign event. And I know that there were some people, among them listeners to this podcast, I know, who kind of made their opposition clear to the city, and the city made its point that it felt this was a legitimate sort of use of resources, but it walks, at the very best, it walks a very fine line.
There's also another event that was brought to our attention that's happening this Saturday. Food for Feedback, which is happening.
Yeah, actually, I'm confusing. Actually, maybe we should stop and restart this whole thing, Joel.
Okay. All right.
I think I fucked that up, and I don't think I'm happy to let that go.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to sort of make a loud noise so I can find this when we're editing it, or so Nick can. So I'm going to clap my hands. I've learned that this is a good thing to do.
Okay.
Okay, let's just start from scratch, and because actually, I think I've confused two different things, and it's that one that we should be talking about.
Yep. Okay. And we're back from our break. So we are leaving the exciting world of constitutional monarchies and colonialism and the passing of heads of state into the myopic world of the city of Burlington electoral policies, amongst other things. Roland, what do we have?
There's a couple of things going on in Burlington that I think deserve mention, and certainly we'll do with the smaller of the two first, maybe, and the bigger one last. So stay tuned to the end of the episode, people. The first one is this: the city's holding something called Food for Feedback, which is an event on September 17th at Brant Hills Park, which is in Ward 3, I believe. In fact, I don't just believe, I am sure. And this is an event where food is being provided at the expense of the city, and councillors will be in attendance. And to be fair, anybody can be there. Candidates can be in attendance too.
The purpose of the event, though, is to provide feedback on city policies, so the city has an idea of what's working and what's not.
Yeah, and I think it's important before we get into this to say that, I don't believe that councillors should be unable to do their job during the election period. They're still councillors. They still have a job to do. The particular format of this event is, let's put it, the most generous way you can put it is a little bit unfortunate, because when you're kind of providing food and refreshments to people, it takes on a bit of the tone of a kind of meet and greet, and you are walking a very fine line of suggesting that kind of giving city endorsement to the incumbents, and and they are going to get publicity from this, and they've already been tweeting it. Councillor Nissan has been sending out on his Twitter account. I know that several councillors, I believe, Councillor Sharman, Councillor Kearns, I believe, I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong. If I am wrong, I apologise, and we'll correct it in the next episode. But I believe that they've kind of said, I'm not going to go to this event, and they haven't said why. They haven't said we're not going to go because of this.
Well, Councillor Sharman did. There's a community picnic or a barbecue happening up in a neighborhood in his riding that he's been invited to, and he's going to attend that, which again is fine. I think in the scheme of things.
I I know some people, including regular listeners to this podcast, have feel very strongly about this, and have made their feelings known to the city. And I'm sure the city manager and the city clerk are ruining the day as we speak. But no, I think it's a fair point. I mean, it's
skirting the rules. Yes, I guess they could be allowed to attend, but really, I mean, because if I was a contender for the mayor's seat or for Ward 3, or heck for any of our any seat in on the council, you go to something like this and you are walking around. People are going to come up to you and say, well, this is my issue. What are you going to do about it? I have this issue with city policy. You want to be a councillor? It's almost like, maybe that's what, if they turn it into that might be fine. They said to all the other candidates, hey, you want to show up to this and hear what people are having to say? Maybe that's how you do it. But to say, no, only existing sitting councils can attend.
I think anybody can. I think anybody can attend.
But you're not allowed to campaign.
Yeah.
They said if we're going to keep a close eye on any campaign, it's like, well, what define campaigning?
Yeah.
Because if I here's the thing, Roland, you ran for a Ward 2 councillor. Say you were it, and I walked up to you and I said, Roland, I got a big problem with I want my park redone. I want a massive overhaul. I want top to bottom new funding for my park. Are you going to make it happen? You're my councillor. Okay, sure. Let me take your number. We'll get to work on it. Are you? Is that a way of securing my vote? What if an opponent said, "Well, no, I would do that too." Okay, well maybe I'd vote for you. Like it's the problem is the city funded event. It is a city, and I think what it comes down to is something that you and I have talked about numerous times on this, is that the city staff are removed from the realities of politics of the council. They don't how you would not, if you were sitting on the city staff, like the top echelons of the city staff, and you saw this, like, why don't we just hold, what do we need to know now? We're less than or about a month away from a municipal election. What do we need to know now to change our policy? Why wouldn't we just sit tight for another month? We'll have another one of these after the election, and the new council, whatever iteration it may take, they can attend and they can hear, hey, these are the issues that you need to get to work on. What was the harm in that? To me, the timing screams as a red flag of basically, the timing.
Yeah, I know. I agree completely. I mean, I think the timing speaks at its best to naivety on the part of the city clerk and the city manager. Okay, so I don't think they're going out their way to help the incumbents. No, I don't believe that for a minute. I just think I think the city clerk in particular wasn't here during Burlington's recent history. For instance, at the last election, when the then challenger to the incumbent mayor, the challenger being Marianne Meed Ward, screamed bloody murder about this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I know that because her campaign manager is willing to point, the person who was a campaign manager in 2018 is willing to point that out to me. It's like, we complained about this exact thing, and now she's doing it. Now the current mayor is doing the same thing. So I think that does provide a fair amount of
Hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's the hypocrisy. I mean, is this going to swing the election one way or the other? No. Burlington, the two people who we know are going to be attending this event, or who have said they're attending, namely the mayor and the councillor for Ward 3, Rory Nissan, I would be astonished. I will eat my hat if either of them isn't elected again. Particularly in the case of the mayor, let's put it that way. I'd be delighted, as very often in my life, to be proved completely ignorant and wrong. I don't want anybody to think I'm swinging anything here. But
this is just poor decision. It's poor decision making on part of the city staff to throw this in the midst of a municipal election. There's no urgent need to get this information, any information from the public on any urgent matter, especially not in this manner. That needs to be done. No major decisions are going to be made in the next month prior to a municipal election. But it shows us the kind of like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing at the municipal level. Like somebody really should have stood up and said, no, we're going to postpone this for a month and a half, maybe, until we get a new council and they can take care of it. Or at least to say, we'll host it, but no candidates are allowed to attend at all, which would mean that the mayor and councillor Nissan would not be able to attend.
Well, and perhaps, the councillor be using his city Twitter account, the account that he uses for city business, be using that same account to publicise. It's a messy grey area in some respects, and there's no easy way around it. And I don't think we should be so pedantic about this that everybody always loses. I mean, we saw a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago that candidates trying to announce the fact that they were running, standing on the forecourt in Hamilton, which is a massive public square, one of the most obvious public squares in the city, and they got booted off the forecourt. Meanwhile, incumbents were allowed to use that same forecourt for official business. It's like, was the city technically in the right? Yes. Does it look terrible? Yes. This kind of situation, is the city technically in the right? I think it's more... it's bad judgment. Would they just have been wise to postpone this for a month, or a month and a half, or whatever it is? I think also yes. So there is a track record now of poor judgment when it comes to how the city clerk's office, and to an extent the city manager's office, interrelate with the mayor, and whether they are willing and able to be properly independent and to stand up to her and say, no, we don't think you should do this. And I'm not sure that they can do that, and they really have to. The mayor is a very strong and opinionated person. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're the city clerk, you're the referee here of the election. You're the person who makes sure that the election is run fairly. You've got to be able to stand up to the mayor and say no. This is technically within the rules, but I think it's a bad idea, and that's probably what needed to be said here.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's technically within the rules. It's putting it too strongly.
Well,
it's a grey area, and if it's a grey area, let's not do it.
Especially in election.
Yeah.
Moving on, but staying in Burlington. This one has a bad pun coming in, folks. This story has a little bit more teeth to it.
The story will run and run. Oh, goodness.
So this is a story that I don't think is just local to, or necessarily local to Burlington. I'm pretty sure this has been reflected in all every municipality in the 905 west of Toronto. But Coyotes, they're here to stay apparently. But That's not a good thing because they're getting very very aggressive. So if here in Burlington, South Central area of Burlington, an elderly woman was bitten by a coyote as she was out just minding her business, going for a walk.
I think she was in fact asleep in sort of a garden and woke up to find the coyote biting her. I think
but
that's what I read anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, this isn't like she herself was not being aggressive to
No.
the animal or anything. It was completely unprovoked. My understanding is she is okay, although I'm sure a bit shaken from the situation, as any of us would be. But this has kind of been a long time coming. This isn't an event that I don't think anyone here in Burlington, I doubt that anyone in the 905 would really say, oh my gosh, that's so shocking. Everybody would say, well, this was going to happen eventually. For years, we have been hearing about coyotes walking brazenly through residential streets, not up near new developments up on the escarpment, but like right downtown, neighborhoods down by the lake, long established neighborhoods. And for years, citizens have been calling into City Hall saying, what are we going to do about this? Can we send animal control to send traps or relocate or to do something with these coyotes? To which the response has always been, nope, nothing, can't do anything about them. The best we got was just, don't leave out garbage, don't feed them, they'll leave you alone. Well, they aren't. The fear, like I'm a parent. I've had coyotes in my neighborhood. I had coyotes walk. We've seen coyotes walking down my street in my neighborhood. The fear is that, if we have young children out, we expect them to be able to go out, play safely in their neighborhood, go to the neighborhood parks, go over to their friends' houses and play and act as children. The last thing we should be fearful of is there a coyote stalking our children? And that might sound hyperbolic, folks, but let's be. I think at this point we're not. Now, the reason why I want to bring it up is I think the city posted an official response on their Facebook page. I think it's a little bit tone deaf, and I'm going to quote directly from this. So when people feed coyotes, intentionally or unintentionally, coyotes become familiar with humans, are no longer afraid of humans, and show more and more aggressive behavior, as is being seen in South Central Burlington. From what city staff shared with Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, scientific and veterinary experts, the experts are convinced these localized attacks are coming from coyotes who have been conditioned to see humans as a food source. It goes on, but basically it's saying that it's people's fault because they leave food out. Well, no kidding. It's called Garbage Day. Tell me, anyone who's listening to this podcast who does not put out their garbage the night before garbage pickup, or maybe get put out on the morning of on your way up to. If you manage to time, like if you don't do it, let us know because I'd love to know what you do with it in that case. But this is ridiculous to say, well, it's your fault because you leave out food as a food source. We all do. It's a city.
Well, also let's remember that the city reduced the number of black bag garbage collections a few years back from every week to every 2 weeks, which generally I'd be completely supportive of, but it means that some types of garbage are now sitting around a bit longer. And the green bin stuff goes out every week. The green bin stuff should be in animal-proof bins or trash cans, so it shouldn't be a problem. But I mean, I'll say how I felt about this whole issue 4 years ago when I was sort of from the point of view of a candidate, and it was like it was a tough one to know what to do with, because there were many residents who understandably worried and concerned about coyotes. And seeing coyotes, I've seen coyotes numerous times when I lived in Burlington. I've seen them late at night. I've been followed by a coyote that was very, very persistent, and was not easily hazed is the word they seem to use. I certainly made a noise and I shouted and I and it wasn't going to come. I didn't feel threatened insofar as it wasn't going to come close to me. I mean, it was interested in my dogs, but at the same time, it also wasn't going away. So it was. Well, it certainly left an impression. Let's put it that way. So, sort of reading on the city website that coyotes are naturally timid. Well, it depends how hungry they are. I think, in my experience, I got the impression that this one was young and very, very hungry. And if you're hungry enough, you stop being shy, right? But as a candidate, it's like, well, I really didn't want to be the kind of knee jerk, let's just shoot them, relocate them sort of thing. And it's like, well, the experts, such as I understood them, were saying this is not the way to go. This doesn't actually help. Killing the coyotes, relocating coyotes, isn't actually a solution. So that's where I was. I mean, that's what I felt.
But see, here's
but here we are now with people being attacked. I was like, well, this can't go on. This isn't acceptable.
But here's the problem: is why do we have coyotes to begin with? It's because we've encroached onto their habitats. For decades, we constantly just say, okay, let's keep building up on the escarpment and build a new neighborhood here. Here's a field. Let's build a new neighborhood. And lo and behold, we've destroyed their habitats and they've come down into our habitats. And what gets me is, this might be beating a dead horse because we're going to bring it back to development because, hey, it always comes back to development on this podcast. Surprise, surprise. It's all connected. And, we encroach onto their habitat. The coyotes come down, and other wild animals will come down into ours and to eat our food. Heck, flashback, we had a black bear in a park here in Burlington a few years ago because it came down off the escarpment because we dug into its habitat. Yet we don't talk about, okay, we do have to stop just assuming we can keep building a new neighborhood on the other side of that road or the other side of that field. We need to start talking about intensification. We need the land that we have, just say we need to start maximizing the use of the land that we've used so far. Will it solve the coyote problem? No. My hope is it doesn't exacerbate it.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit naive to, as again, like you said, if you go to the city website to basically say, well, this is caused by garbage, by food sources, by barbecues, by bird feeders. Fine, then ban those things, and good luck to you. Trying to ban people's barbecues and bird feeders. These are the things that we have done as humans for hundreds and hundreds of years. You've got to be realistic here. Human society produces garbage. It also produces barbecues and bird feeders. You're going to have to live with it. Now, my understanding is that certainly one of the dens of problem coyotes was tracked down to a vacant lot, of which there are many in Burlington. Developers buy up lots and sit on them for decades and decades in some cases. Certainly years and years and years. They often do not take particularly good care of that land while it was sitting vacant. In fact, a scrappy and unpleasant-looking lot can sometimes motivate a city to let a developer do what it wants to do, because the city gets sick of looking at it. So, are you absolutely sure that this is just down to citizens being citizens and not looking after their garbage? Or, are we finding that some of these vacant lots that the developers let sit around for years and years on end are also providing a very convenient and comfortable habitat for the coyotes? One thing we can be sure of, I mean, it's now reached a point where just saying tie up your trash bags, people, isn't good enough. I mean, if that really is the problem, then provide people with better garbage things.
I-
Ban bird feeders if you really want to. I don't think anybody's going to do that though. You know, I mean, if that's really the problem, then don't let us do it. I mean,
What
there's all
I
kinds
what I
of
liked
things
was
you can do.
the best response that the city had to this whole situation was, "We're going to give you a whistle. Go get a whistle," and then they ran out of whistles. And I'm like, that to me struck me as like the entire platform. What can we do? Get a whistle, and maybe that'll. And like, here's the thing: the whistle will work probably initially. What will happen though is that my bet is that coyote will just get used to it. Like that's the thing. The coyote gets used to our behavior and our thing, and it's.
And as I remember, yeah, I mean, it's like it's when I was, I guess, stalked by a coyote. And myself, my two dogs, my wife, or four of us, kind of big group, stalked by a coyote for a good 15 to 20 minutes, and I shouted at it. I'm pretty sure I threw rocks at it, and it did not go away. So I'm not sure a whistle would have had any effect. I'm really not sure that a whistle would have had any effect at all. You know, sometimes making a gesture is better to do nothing. You know, bloody hell. Yeah, I mean, it's like if you're gonna have whistles, at least buy a big enough bag of whistles. I mean, my goodness.
You know,
It looks reactive. It looks knee jerk. It looks stupid. So
it is, and that's
you know, maybe they work. I don't know. It still looks stupid. So I'm not too impressed by that.
let's leave it at that. An episode of disappointments. So, but let's leave it at that.
Little rays of sunshine here at the 905.
All right, folks. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode. Take care.
Bye bye.